as soon as 12:15 comes around, you guys can start regardless of the numbers that are in the room, because as I said, it's going to be recorded, right? So, yeah, just go ahead and we'll post it so that many other people can see it.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Have a good session.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, so thank you. It is 12:15, so we will get our session started. We're pleased to have you join us for the Parents and Caregiver as Partners conference. We will start our session, which is supporting students with developmental disabilities and their transition beyond high school. So first we will start with the land acknowledgement, and then we'll jump right in. Thank you for being here. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that this meeting is situated upon traditional territories. These territories include the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Métis Nation. I would also like to recognize the enduring presence of Aboriginal peoples on this land. We'll just take a moment and reflect on our usage of the land. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I'd like to welcome you to our presentation. We're thrilled that you are here. I will briefly introduce our presenters today. I'd like to, and if at the time, wave your hand at presenters so people know who you are. I'd first like to introduce Paulina Kukar. Paulina is a current assistant curriculum leader, and she has former Project Search classroom teacher, and she is also supporting experiential learning. So good morning, Paulina. I'd also like to introduce Leanne Boutelier, who is one of our central co-op education teachers, and she does work with partnerships with the UHN. So thank you, Leanne. We also have with us one of our partners with the TDSB partners through Project Search, which is Carolyn McDougall, and Carolyn is a project strategy lead for employment pathways and works out of Holland Fullerview. Janelle Withers is our parent, and we're thrilled to have Janelle with us because she brings a parent perspective and experience, which is so valuable. So thank you, Janelle, for being here to share with everyone. My name is Wendy Tarot. I am currently a centrally assigned principal with Learning Transformation and Equity, and I support special education and inclusion. And we have Denise DePaula, who is also a centrally assigned principal who supports student well-being and innovation, and within that, experiential learning. So thank you, presenters, and we're thrilled that we have an opportunity to come together to speak with you about the transition into employment. Okay, thank you. So the session today, just to set the context, we will be focusing on practical long-term strategies for parents and caregivers as you support youth with special education needs throughout high school and in the transition to the workplace or post-secondary. So we will be exploring some of those in-school learning opportunities and skill development, and also how parents can support at home as well. We'll also take some time to look at the support and resources within the school system as well to support during school and beyond. So thank you. There we go. And I love this slide because it talks about high expectations. High expectations create possibilities. So being here, learning with us about how you can support your child, and we at the school board can also support your child so that you have a plan in place for post-secondary school. So throughout the session, again, we're going to be talking about really what does predict post-school employment. So what are those pieces that really help to ensure that there's opportunities? And number one, of course, is families' high expectations of their child. And so working as a team, really understanding and knowing the great things that your child can do, and working with them to develop those skills is really important. We also will be looking at and talking about how our participation in those broad range of experiences in childhood are so important as we start creating possibilities for after high school. So these are engaging in all sorts of different activities and more. It's you being here and being a part of the plan is really valuable. So thank you. I'm now going to, we're going to jump right in. We have, just before though I get into it, I just wanted to do a little housekeeping. If you're, for the view, if you would like, at the top right-hand corner of your screen, you should be able to see a little button that says view. And there's one that says speakers view. That's a little bit easier to see everyone as they're presenting. So if you'd like to do that, it's a little icon in the top right-hand corner, and it's called speaker view, if that is of ease for your viewing pleasure. We would then, I'm now going to be passing it over. So I'd like to invite Paulina Kukar, who's and Leanne Boutelier to start talking about in-school learning and the skill development that comes along with that. Leanne and Paulina?
Great, thank you, Wendy. Good afternoon, everybody. So if we could just go to the next, oh yes, perfect, thank you. So one of the best ways to develop skills in school is through experiential learning. And what is experiential learning anyway? So it is the act of fully participating in an activity and being focused on what's being learned while doing the activity, then reflecting on the learning and what it means so that it can be applied in other areas of work and life. Then using the new skills to participate again in another activity, reflect again, and apply in a continuous cycle. Experiential learning activities come in many forms. For example, they could be courses at school, field trips, work experience, could be volunteering outside the school or in the school, could be school clubs, and so on. They help develop transferable skills like critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, as well as specific learning skills, like hard skills, like cooking or using a computer, for example, organizing books in a library, and so on. The goal here is to develop a deeper understanding of learning and its connection to the real world. And we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. So the TDSB offers students with developmental disabilities various access points to experiential learning through what is called the experiential learning continuum. There are 3 levels to the continuum, and as you can see from this chart, level 1 offers activities in the classroom, and those things could be preparing food, packaging items, sorting, cleaning, and so many more things. These activities help students develop skills with varying levels of independence. When students have developed these skills, they may be ready to move on to level 2, which involves activities within the school. So they're kind of expanding on from what they did in the classroom. So they could be working in departments or programs, the school store, if the school has one, school cafeteria, or some other program that the school has. Again, when students have fully developed these skills and the independence in level 2, they may be ready to move on to level 3, which is an experience in the community. And that could be a number of things like job shadowing, work experience, cooperative education, or some other community opportunity. The experiential learning continuum could be planned over several years of a student's high school career, and it's as individual as every student. The goal of the continuum is to provide students with greater community involvement and independence beyond school, whether that be in the community program, post-secondary education, volunteer work, or in employment. And Paulina, I'm handed over to you.
Thanks, Leanne. So as Leanne mentioned, every student, if we could please go to the next slide, works across, thank you, the continuum, excuse me, at their own pace and over their time in high school. So whether students are formally enrolled in something like a co-op course, which can happen in grades 11 and 12, or are developing skills in the classroom and through other experiential learning opportunities, the opportunities vary from student to student on what is accessible at that time and available, but also from school to school, there are different structures for these programs. What is really important is that this is a collaborative process that happens over time and changes, sometimes from year to year, but more often multiple times throughout the year. And all of the components on this slide here are what is considered when charting a student's growth across the experiential learning continuum. So the student's own interest, input from folks at home and in the community, activities of daily living, chores and recreational activities that happen outside of school, medical, safety and emergency plans, their updates over time, the interests inventory, which is sometimes a bit more structured and can elicit different information than less formal conversations about interests, transportation, training and community safety, agency affiliation, the communication method and level of students, as well as self-advocacy skills, how folks are adapting to changes and self-regulating through their routines, sensory needs and triggers, and motor skills, and the degree of the support required. All of this is charted over time as students move through the continuum. Next slide, please. So, as we said, this changes over time, and there's no one way to do this kind of process. So at the schools, we're very aware that this is a collaboration that is student supported and often student-led. And I can give you an example of a student I had last year who came into the co-op course with an interest in clerical work and successfully completed a placement in a clerical setting, and then spoke to a classmate who was working in an industrial kitchen, came back and said, I think I'm really interested in that. Can I try? And went on and tried that work and found they really enjoyed it, did a placement in the kitchen, and after graduation are now working in that area. So the ministry has a framework that we follow when we think about education and career life planning, which really is also the same framework when we think about transition planning through high school and beyond. And it's a conversation that happens between the students' own knowledge of their interests and their skills, the different opportunities they have available to them through experiential learning in school, and also the things that are happening at home and in the community. That all informs the kinds of decisions and goals that are set. Some goals are met, new goals are set, there's a transition plan, and all of this repeats. There is a structured time of year to do this, which may be in the fall when IEPs are revised. But really, ideally, this is something that is revisited multiple times a year by everyone who is supporting students through their transition planning. At this point, I'd like to pass over the presentation to Janelle Withers, who brings a parent perspective, and Denise DePaula, who is the centrally assigned principal, student wellbeing and innovation. And they're going to speak about what parents and caregivers can do to support at home.
Thanks,
Great.
Paulina.
Thank you,
My
Paulina.
name is Janelle Withers, and my daughter is Natasha, and she's 24 and has a mild intellectual disability. And I'm happy to say that she's been working now for 9 months in senior care. And I'm really happy to be here today to share our family's experiences and what we went through. So I think as a family, there are many opportunities to help build strengths and experience for your youth. But as we've said previously, these can change over time as skills are learned and improved, and also based on the physical abilities and strengths of the individual. Learning how to look after themselves and their belongings could include independently brushing their teeth or combing their hair. You can help them learn what has to go into their backpack every day and then let them do it. Teaching youth how to sort their own laundry and put away toys and clean their rooms are extremely valuable life skills. As they get a little bit older, you can teach them to make their own lunches, and that way you're guaranteed that they'll eat them. Teaching them time organization, including setting alarms, setting up a play date with a friend, and setting aside time to complete homework will help them throughout life at any stage. You can get them to help around your house by preparing part of dinner, setting and clearing the table. Have them take responsibility for the family pet and watering your garden. As their skill set grows, perhaps have them make a grocery list and go shopping with you, shadowing at first and then letting them pay. Older youth could help send family emails or plan a dinner party menu. Teaching them to make their own appointments is so important if they are going to live independently in the future. On the next slide, I'd like to share some of the expectations and learning experiences that my family set out for our daughter. We tried to build my daughter's skills from a very young age. One of the first things we taught Natasha was to take a big jar of buttons that I had in my workroom and separate the buttons into piles, grouped by shape and color, and then learn how to count them. We made it a game and she learned a lot from it. Right from the get-go, we expected her to put toys away right after using them and to keep her room tidy. When she was old enough, she had to clean her own bathroom. We taught her how to do kitchen cleanup after meals, and to this day, I enjoy the best, cleanest kitchen ever. As she grew older, we looked for outside life skill programs to help reinforce things that we were also teaching at home, such as money and social skills. One of the best programs was one that taught conversational skills. There was a lot of role playing involved, and we could then reinforce these skills at home. The program required the students to organize and arrange a play date, which was very challenging for my daughter, but we got there in the end. Another excellent program she signed up for was how to use the TTC. This was so valuable in her getting to her volunteer positions. When Natasha started high school, we set the expectation that she would volunteer every year during school breaks and often during the school year. She logged over 450 hours throughout high school. And we tried to instill early on that volunteering was just like a job. You have to go in whether you like it or not. And as a result, she only missed one volunteer shift throughout her 5 years of high school. She feels really proud of that and uses those skills of dependability and reliability as her greatest strengths when applying for jobs. And her current employer really appreciates those, and she's often called in when other people don't show up for work. Early in Natasha's volunteering, we thought that elder or childcare might be a good fit for her. So we sort of steered her in those directions for volunteer positions. She also became very familiar with senior care from visiting her grandmother in long-term care, and actually became a companion caring for my mom one summer. One of her very first volunteer positions was tidying tables and chairs for the residents at that facility. And she made friendships with several of the residents that lasted for years. So these are just a few examples of what we did to help my daughter learn skills and prepare for independent living. Back to you.
Hey, thank you, Janelle. So Janelle's examples and stories are an important way of sharing how you can get involved at home and setting high expectations and work in collaboration with community partners, volunteer organizations, and the school to make sure that the expectations and routines and skills that you're building at home as a family with your youth continue into those spaces so that they're skills that can be built upon and transfer as they move beyond high school. It's important to recognize the critical influence of having high expectations has on youth in developing skills that will lead to success both inside and outside of school. These expectations, which begin at home, will support you and them also in advocating for others, the school system and beyond, to expect the same thing and to set those high expectations for students as they're learning and developing skills. The foundation for this work is support in completing tasks and meeting goals, alongside encouragement in building towards a slow release of responsibility to the youth, where the level, pace, and quality of task completion are high. And it may not start, that level may change as they build skills. Focusing on what your youth is able to do now and will be able to do in the future is important as opposed to focusing on what they're not able to do. In focusing on what they're able to do and what they can do moving forward, you can celebrate and acknowledge small victories along the way, and that will lead to setting conditions for high expectations in all areas. Supporting and encouraging participation in activities in the home, as Janelle just described, builds skills and confidence over time, and the ability to transfer those skills to school and employment. So the experiential learning opportunities are not limited to school. Those opportunities, anything that your youth can engage in at home, within your family, within your communities, are experiential learning opportunities that just add to the building blocks of their skill development. Outside of the home, families can support students to engage in community activities and volunteer opportunities that meet their interests and areas of strength. This will support them in becoming confident and comfortable with engaging in social situations and workspaces, and to practice interactions with members of the community, their workplace, or volunteer organizations. When involving youth in household activities and chores, as well as tasks in the community, having clear expectations for the completion and pace and quality of performance in those activities will lead to greater success. Next slide. So when we're looking at what high expectations can look like in performance for youth, it depends on the youth, and that will change. So we start with where they're at and build upon that. And it's about giving the students the opportunity to experience and engage in a task, be supported in understanding where they have had success and where there can be improvement in task completion, and then continue to practice and build upon their skills until they've achieved a high level of completion. And when we tie this back to the experiential learning experience, when we tie this back to expectations in school and all the information we use to support that we have about student learning and interests that we use to support the building, this becomes a collaboration truly between home and school, where student skills are built in both areas and complement each other. Modeling a completed task, setting a goal, and expectations for pace. How long should it reasonably take to complete the task? Quality of completion. How well is the task completed? And that might be a step-by-step process for the youth. So it might be the first step that they're completing this task, and it's just done. However, the quality completion of that task may take some time. So for example, if we take a household chore, like making their bed, keeping their room clean. Initially, that might look like the bed cover is, thrown over the bed, pillows are in place, we're done. That's completion. And for some, that might be a first good step. But the goal is to say, okay, what do we need to do next to increase the quality of that completion of the task? And we praise the victories and we add to the expectations. Working with them together to support how they communicate questions, frustrations, to achieve that high quality of completion is important as well. So practicing those conversations with them in terms of how they share their frustrations or how they share their questions, how they can ask for additional support if needed is really important, because that support and encouragement all along the way are essential in how we set high expectations at home, and then how we can support those high expectations in the classroom. Next slide, please. So I'd now like to welcome Carolyn McDougall, who's the Project Strategy Lead, Employment Pathways and Business Liaison for Project Search Toronto at Holland Bloorview, and an occupational therapist, and Wendy Tarot, centrally assigned principal with special education and inclusion, to talk about the supports and resources that are available both in school and in the community to support families in supporting their students achieve these high expectations. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Is my audio okay, or I should turn off my camera?
You're okay right now. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. These are some examples of supports and resources for give a sense. Of course, there are many more. So encourage parents and caregivers to consider options for accessible and inclusive recreation. For example, with City of Toronto, YMCA, Variety Village, others. Options of organizations that may support life skills programming or health and wellness services. Example, Holland Bloorview, Surrey Place, many more. Parent education, webinars, networks, and parent organized groups and programs can be incredibly invigorating, so rich, and a great source of support and networking. Specifically also parent networks. And then there are many great resource websites. These are a few of my favorites. So Connectability, My Community Hub, Directly Services, and Partners for Planning. These are great websites. We can upload these slides into the chat, and I'll do that now as I turn over to Wendy so that you'll have the links.
There we go. Sorry, I'm struggling with finding my my unmute button. So here we go. Thank you very much, Carolyn. So on this slide, we wanted to really circle back to talk about the resources and supports that are available at the school level. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, it is important to start thinking about transitions earlier. So at the school level, transition planning for big transitions and little transitions occurs throughout the year, and this is documented on the student's IEP. It's really important to stay connected with your child's teacher, to share and share your goals, your child's goals, and also the work and experiences you're engaging in at home. To discuss what additional supports and skills your child might benefit from learning so that their transition to work post-secondary will be successful. The school support team is a collaborative team that will work to discuss and support the transitions. The members of the team, as you may be familiar, include yourself as a parent, your child, the principal, special education staff, and as well as professional support services, which may include social work or occupational or physical therapist staff, speech and language, and so forth. You can request to meet with the school support team to discuss the skills and strengths and needs of your child, and really to plan collaboratively for a successful transition. This is also important annually. If your child is identified as exceptional, you would have an annual IPRC review, and that's a really wonderful time to meet with the school staff to talk about the transition planning. This team will work with you. I included in this slide the graphic that Paulina had spoken about earlier, because it is such a powerful graphic, and you know, having your child have input is really important as well. And as Paulina and Janelle talked about, what are the interests, you know, what sort of opportunities are there? And who do I really want to become? And those are important questions for your child, and aligned with that, those high expectations. So to support really a successful, you know, post high school outcome. For students who are transitioning into the community, the school could also provide links to resources, connections with agencies, similar to what Carolyn had spoken about, access to funding once you finish school, as well as respite. There's also, you know, as we mentioned earlier, the importance of the recreation and leisure activities. And these could be, you know, links to sort of summer camps or different programs. For students who are also transitioning into the community, there's also opportunities for TTC training. So how to support commuting around the city through the TTC. Looking at life skills as well beyond school. And that's where we have this wonderful opportunities for co-op and volunteer experiences, similar to what Janelle had spoken about, you know, practicing for the work world and practice and using those experiences as work experiences, so they develop those skills that are so necessary when they're in that move into that the work and life. So students who are also transitioning into employment, you know, having those unpaid volunteer experiences really will help them develop skills and identify future pathways. As well, the clubs and activities. So we know that, you know, clubs and activities and, you know, working with peers is so vital as students develop all sorts of necessary skills for the workplace, whether it's interacting with people who are familiar or unfamiliar, navigating relationships, those social experiences and skills, you know, even just following the rules of a game are so important, because they do transfer into other life experiences as well. So that's at the school level. And I also, all of us wanted to sort of bring it back to the beginning about the parent, caregiver, and school partnerships, and how high expectations truly do create possibilities. So as a parent, being an active participant in the transition planning with the school, with external agencies, if you're connected, is important, but also the work you do at home with your child, and those daily tasks are a really important skill development. So we encourage you to stay in touch with the school and, you know, connect regularly with them to review these transition plans. It doesn't have to happen once a year. It can be an ongoing discussion so that to develop an ongoing consistent support. The schools as well, many also offer school sessions for parents and caregivers, and these could be held by the school that talks about transitions on an annual basis. It could also be presentations from external partners or agencies that you may want to be connected with as you move out of school. And again, you know, planning through high school, you know, or even earlier, learning those skills is so important. So the earlier you start thinking about it, the more opportunity you'll have to continue building those skills. So we are really excited that you're here with us, and we wanted to make sure that we would have time for questions. So so I'm going to be, we have the chat set up for you. The chat questions will come to us, and we will monitor and answer them as we go through. But thank you so much for being here. There is a lot of information that we have shared, but as Carolyn had mentioned, she'll put the PDF of the slides in here. And also, you know, connecting with your school is a really important piece, and they'll be able to help you as well as you work through these transitions. So I'm going to stop now and see if my colleagues have any questions that have come in, and we can start answering those.
I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet.
So,
from people.
We do have one question around how we can help with what's available to help with transition to college. And sort of we've been going back and forth around the question. And I think one of the difficulty around that, there's a lot of options available, whether they're community supports and programs that can help with that transition or within the school. It's so different depending on the actual youth and what the skills that maybe continue to need to be developed, the skills that are strengths, what the area of interest is. Also in Ontario, there isn't one set of rules for all colleges, or one set of programs that are in all colleges. So it really is looking at what colleges are you interested in, and the youth is interested in what they're interested in studying, and then working with that college to find out what is available for them and what they have available in terms of programming, and working with the schools team. And so I know Wendy has talked a lot about the school support team and the staff at the school who are working with the student regularly. And in collaboration, it really needs to be done together. There are programs that we offer. So we do as a board have some central co-op programs. We have some central experiential learning programs that can help develop the skills needed to support that transition. It's what courses might they need to take at the high school that will help support that transition and readiness for college. I'm sorry, because I wish I could say if you go here and do these 3 things, the youth will be ready to transition, but it's very individualized. But there are a lot of supports in the school that can help with that, that process. And if they're not sure, they connect with our teams who have connections with the colleges or with other centralized programs that can help. I hope that helps answer that question. And
Thank you. I see that Zena has a question, has a hand up. You can unmute yourself if you'd like to go ahead and ask the question.
Thanks. I'm just wondering, as a parent who has a child who's going to be going to post-secondary school, they really want to, which is great, and they went to a university fair, I guess, at the school this week. What I'm wondering is, I know as parents, even at the curriculum night, there was a session for parents to find out, what application fees are and when those deadlines are. I don't know if it's a situation where I go to my school council or I go to my guidance department, but are there ever presentations for families where it's not like there's gray area, where they need to know that getting a psychoeducational assessment is going to be helping their child advocate for supports they need in post-secondary? I'm just curious what team at the TDSB has a presentation put together to help empower students to realize that, if this is part of their journey, where do they, what do they need to do? Because they're taking on that responsibility if they want to go to post-secondary. And even for families, even though once you get to post-secondary, you're on your own, kid, you make your decisions, that kind of thing. But as parents, how do we support that from a distance? Or how do we, make sure that they are spreading their wings, but we can give them that gentle reminder saying, so did you fill out that form for student accessibility, at York, and things like that? Not so we go to the appointments with them, because that's not our job, and we will not be allowed in those offices, actually, because we're not the student. But just wondering, I know that the mainstream, so to speak, tends to get those presentations, and I worry about the kids that are going to feel like they fall through the cracks or nobody cares, that they need that support too. And they might have somebody from the special ed department that meets with them every 2 weeks, or they have the resource room to go to, but almost the fear that a student could feel left behind, and mental health wise, that will spiral them to think, well, I'm not those kids, I shouldn't even think of a scholarship, which I'm sure they can apply for, to make them part of that, to help them make those choices.
Thanks so much for the question. I know Carolyn just put a link in the chat. Do you want to jump in? So I appreciate that you've highlighted the school support team, like that regular process that's involved. But it's going deeper, I think, is what your question is really looking at. And as students become more independent, we want that independence and that advocacy. But as a parent, how do you kind of keep along with them on that? So Carolyn, I'm going to pass it to you because I see you put something in there. And then if anyone else wants to also add to that, that would be great. Carolyn, go ahead.
I think a bit internet. Can you hear me okay or no?
We sort of can. Go ahead.
I'll try, but yes, I put a link in the chat. TDSB and Holland Bloorview have a series of webinars coming up starting next Saturday. Leanne and I are speaking next Saturday. So for young people and parents and caregivers who are starting to plan for post-secondary transition, I think that's one thing, starting just talking about some of the elements. You highlighted so many of them. And ultimately sort of checking out different programs through visiting and talking about some of the accessibility and inclusion supports on the different campuses can certainly help make a start on that. I think that the challenge you highlighted of how to support as a parent is definitely a big one to plan for. We do usually in January do a special webinar on that topic as well too. So if you want to put your contact info even in the chat, we can make sure we get that flyer directly to you, but we're going to certainly circulate that broadly as well through TDSB social media.
Thank you, because I'm sure I'm not alone with that question.
Yeah, such
No,
an
it's
important question.
And
It is, and
I
there's
would-
so much planning involved, right? So Denise, go ahead. Sorry to.
Yeah, no, and I think I hear you when you say that schools do these big nights, and not all schools necessarily are hitting that gray area. And I think having that feedback from you today is really important, because that's feedback we can take back to all the levels, whether it's our central presentations, if we feel we're not hitting the mark, if we think we're hitting the mark and we're clearly not. So how do we go back and bring this feedback back to say, okay, we need to be more explicit about these areas that we might think we're addressing, but we need to address them better or more explicitly, and then taking that back to school teams as well. So I want to thank you for that feedback, the question and the feedback, because it informs us now moving forward as well. And we'll make sure that that goes forward to all the different spaces that are sharing this information with school communities, whether they be local or central.
Thank you. And actually, one more last little tiny thing, sorry. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the information about the workshops. But one thing I'm also noticing is there are some folks where, due to the stigma around special education, their child may have been struggling all the way through high school because they didn't want to talk about it. And then suddenly they'll realize, wait a minute, there's supports when they get to post-secondary. So again, that's why I think some of this would be helpful for everyone and not just even for that particular audience.
Thank you. That's a really good point, because it is true. There's a lot of different supports once students transition out of secondary, and so schools can provide, links to resources and agencies, which is great. But having that information at the forefront. So thank you so much for that. We did have another question that came to us through the chat, so maybe I will read it out. So it's asking about a student who, has a severe learning disability and has finished high school. And so how do they access other programs? And so I think, again, I'm going to throw it to, I think, Carolyn, you may be Carolyn is our community, partner here with such a wealth of connections and knowledge. And then maybe Janelle, I'm not sure if you also want to sort of talk a little bit about it from the parent perspective. But I will pass it to Carolyn first, and then maybe Janelle, if you feel you can add to it.
Absolutely.
Sure. Do you mind just repeating the question for me, Wendy? I was typing a reply to Zena, so I actually didn't hear it.
I'm sorry, every time I turn my mic off, it disappears. So I have to kind of use my mouse to find it again. So I'm a little delayed. The question is a child who has a severe learning disability who's actually finished with high school, and now they're trying to look at supports after. You talked about in the presentation about some community agencies and connections. Can you add more to that? They're really looking for help, that support. So they finished high school now and they're moving into the work or community environment.
I think I'm definitely a fan of linking with associations and parent networks. So like you may already be connected with the Learning Disability Association. And I think sometimes then the guidance and resource sharing can be very, very specific. I think as well, like if looking for sort of employment related supports, I can perhaps put another link in the chat that kind of contains a list of resources around participation generally, and also sort of employment connections that may be helpful. There are certainly a lot of organizations that you can connect with for links and supports that way. I think those are, I think there's employment and volunteering are, two parts of a good life, and there's lots of other elements as well too. So there certainly are organizations that can help with families to support their young people to get engaged and participate. Janelle, do you want to add to that?
I would just agree with everything that Carolyn said. And it sounds like, Carolyn, that this could be covered in one of our other webinars that I've participated in how to prepare for life after high school. So maybe you could give those links out.
Yeah, I'll put that link. That's right. Janelle's recording actually of one of those sessions is on the Connectability website. So I'll go find that link now and put that in the chat. Thanks, Janelle, for that reminder. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I'm looking at the time and we have 2 minutes left before this session finishes. Do we have any more questions? I would like to, first of all, though, thank everyone for joining us today and for your questions to help richen the discussion. So if there's any other questions, please let me know now. If not, in the chat, Carolyn has put a few different resources. So you have to click to download those documents. So they will download onto your computer. So you can download them onto your desktop or what have you. But those are great resources to have with future learning opportunities. Okay. So we'll give you a minute just to make sure you're downloading those. And just on behalf of the group, thank you so much for being here. Oh, thank you, Carolyn, put a link. So that's, that's easy too.
Just made it there under the wire before,
Yeah, perfect.
before we ended.
Well, thank you. I hope you are enjoying all the sessions from the Parents as Partners conference, and we're so pleased that you can come out and join today, and you know, hopefully you'll get a few minutes to enjoy this lovely weather too, because it's, as you can see, the sun is blaring in my face. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.